All right, so I think we are live, and I am just going to check, Amer, that we are showing up on the screen here.
I still see you, so
You do? Okay,
it
got it.
says on air you're in the show.
Oh, we're on air. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So exciting. We did it.
And all right,
Oops.
so I think we are live.
Hold on one sec. So can you still hear me, Amer?
I can hear you perfectly, yeah.
Okay,
There
so
might be
there's
an audio delay in case we drop an F-bomb or something like that. So
exactly. There's a little
all
bit of
right.
a delay, so I'm trying
All
to
right.
see if I can mute that, but you can still hear me, so we should be good to go. And then, yeah, okay, so let's do it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to LinkedIn's Leadership Live series here, a legit Leadership Live series here. I'm Raabia Shafi. I am so excited to join you all today with my esteemed guest here, Dr. Amer Aldeen, and we'll get into that in just a moment. Really, really thrilled to have him here. And the purpose of these legit Leadership Live series conversations are to have a dialogue and an opportunity to have some real talk with leaders. I have my own consulting firm, as many of you know, Raabia Shafi Consulting, and this year I kicked off this series because I think it's high time that we talk and kind of pull back the curtain to see what does it take to be an effective leader, a powerful leader, and one that's showing up in a way that's in line with your values, so that you can lead in the best way possible. So I am here with my guest, Dr. Amer Aldeen. Amer, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks very much, Robbie. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to, Amer, we'll dive in a moment with some questions and want to talk a little bit about your experience and what you do. I'd love to give the group a bio of those who are watching, a bit of a bio of you so they know who the heck you are and what you're doing.
Great. Go ahead.
Awesome. So Dr. Amer Aldeen is Chief Medical Officer of USCAS and is responsible for the education, safety, quality, innovation, risk management, recruiting, research, clinician engagement, and patient experience. And could you tell us really quickly as we dive in, Amer, what USACS is and what you all are focused on, and then we'll get back to your bio.
Yeah, US Acute Care Solutions is the largest physician-owned acute care clinical group in the country. So think of us as a big practice, a medical practice of emergency physicians, hospital medicine physicians, ICU physicians, even a few obstetric GYN physicians, as well as PAs, physician assistants, and NPs, nurse practitioners, and then all of our support team members, our non-clinical support team members. So we have 2,200 full-time clinicians, about just under 3,000 total full-time employees, and we're spread in 19 states throughout the country.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And also a side note, some of you may or may not know this, but Dr. Amer Aldeen is actually my cousin. So many were like, how'd you get to be able to talk to someone so cool like that? I was like, well, he's like my brother. So I got lucky. So thank you. Thanks for joining, Amer. And Amer lives in Tampa, Florida, and is originally from Northern Virginia, where we grew up together in the same area. And he received his BA in Interdisciplinary Religious Studies and his MD from the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Go Wahoos. And he completed his EM residency at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, serving as chief resident in 2006. Amer was site principal investigator for the $3.5 million Geriatric Emergency Department Innovations Grant at Northwestern, and there he was developing protocols to improve the care of older adults in the emergency room. He founded and directs the Chicago Cardiac Arrest Resuscitation Education Service, which trains the Chicago Police Department in life-saving skills. He is co-author of Aldeen and Rosenbaum's 1,200 Questions to Help You Pass the Emergency Medicine Boards, has multiple peer-reviewed research publications, and won the Northwestern EM Faculty Teaching Award for 6 years in a row. What a baller, Amer. And the Amer Aldeen Junior Faculty Teaching Award at Northwestern is named after him. So thank you again for being here. I'm so psyched to dive in. And as we do dive in, I think one thing I just want to say up front, and I know that those of all of us who are watching, I think I can echo their sentiments, is to thank you as a healthcare professional and all your colleagues and all those who have worked so diligently and continue to do so every minute of the day to help with this bizarre global pandemic. So we appreciate that. So, yeah. So, Amer, I would love to dive in if you can share a little bit about what you're up to these days, given there's a lot of different things I'm sure you're focused on. Can you share with us kind of what you've been zeroing in on over the last few months in terms of your work?
Sure. So as you can imagine, there's a pre-COVID life that I had, and now an intra-COVID life. I'm hoping there's a post-COVID life too. What we did before COVID, as you mentioned, I was responsible for education, safety, quality, and then a few other things, recruiting, research, and risk management in our group. And then what we did was we managed all those things centrally, but then healthcare is very much a local phenomenon. So the local leaders that we have, really, really important that we leverage their skills. And it's hard to get a national company to filter down so that everyone feels familiar. But that's in large part what I do is manage all those things nationally, but then find a way to translate those locally. On the COVID side, our group obviously got crushed with COVID patients early on. At first, we didn't know what it was. We didn't have management, management principles, and then my team and we got together and researched a number of items. We stayed up to date on the latest literature. And so we provided those protocols, that advice to our physicians, PAs, and NPs. We called them collectively clinicians. We provided advice. And the biggest thing, and I think all of you can recognize this as well, whether or not you're in healthcare, is the sheer amount of information coming at you is prodigious. It is, it's like to use the commonly probably overused phrase, drinking from a fire hydrant. I mean, it was like drinking from 10 fire hydrants. It was huge amounts of information. And then the other piece to that is, with the information is misinformation. So someone hears a rumor, oh, this is happening, that's happening, and suddenly it snowballs into, oh, well, let's do this or let's do that. And we saw that early on with, medications that were briefly studied. A lot of people are nervous, they start using them, and then you get side effects from them and no actual beneficial effects. And it's taken time for the medical community to really develop some of the good therapeutics that we have, culminating, I think, in the recent announcement by the FDA to issue emergency use authorization for the COVID vaccine. So our group has gone through the ups and downs of this. It's mostly downs, I feel like, and my team and I have tried to maintain a level of discipline around the information part of it, and tried to regulate tried to regulate the amount of information so that we're not over-informing folks. And you must see this, Raabia, as well in your discipline, that too much information, too little information is bad. We acknowledge that. Too much information is bad too. It leads to anxiety, indecision. And so you have to get the right amount, you have to trust the right people, and then you have to take action based on that.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because when being a leader in this role, you have what I imagine are competing priorities between taking care of your team, making sure that their anxiety levels are kind of regulated so that they can help to take better care of the patients that you serve. And then there's the business interests of the system that you're working with as well. And then kind of keeping up appearances, keeping up to date with all these other kind of things that are going on. And for a lot of our listeners, some of them are in the healthcare field. A lot of my clients are, and some are not. I work across all industries. So I guess the question I have for you, Amer, is when it comes to a high stress environment like we've been experiencing this year in particular, how do you as a leader manage these competing priorities and still are able to still can take care of your employees as that number one stakeholder?
It's a great question. I think one of the things that helps me a lot and helps my colleagues, of course, is being in an acute care specialty. So I trained as an emergency room doctor, and when people say their job is like life and death, well, many times my job was like life and death. And I've certainly, I've certainly seen my share of patients die. Um, like with any physician, those folks, some of them were on my watch, and you have to deal with that. But when you manage situations like that, crisis situations that occur outside of the healthcare realm become, it's never easy, but it's tolerable, and you're able to kind of get a framework for how to manage those situations in a calm fashion. One of the things I recall is when running a cardiac arrest resuscitation, and please understand, cardiac arrest is different from heart attack. Heart attack, you have people go and get their angioplasty or whatever. Cardiac arrest means your heart stopped and essentially you're dead for all intents and purposes. And the ability to bring someone back to life is what we call cardiac arrest resuscitation. And so during my cardiac arrest resuscitations, one thing I noticed about myself is you feel the sense, obviously, of anxiety and urgency, but the further I went in training, the slower and more deliberate I got, so that by the end of my training and when I was practicing, and even now, when a cardiac arrest comes in, I'm calmer than I am when an ankle sprain comes in. It's because I know that, and I've practiced it, that you make the best decisions when you're deliberate and calm in a panic situation. And one of the things I like to say is there are two things that are contagious: panic and calm. And so when you're the leader of a care team taking care of a critically ill patient, you have to maintain calm. Now, in my role as one of the leaders of the largest physician-owned acute care company in the country, is during a COVID pandemic, I have to maintain that calm and that even-keeled status.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I remember growing up, that was something that that you shared, because we would always talk about what your experience has been in the ER. And I know my brother, sister, and I would sit around and be like, Amer, tell us the grossest thing that you had to deal with. And I mean, gross is one word for it, right? But the professional lens is like high stress, high intensity, life or death situation. So that totally, I think that that must resonate with other leaders that are checking in today too. Um, and one of the things I also wanted to ask you, Amer, is knowing that you have spent quite a bit of time in the ER dealing with these high stress situations, how has that helped you, if at all, in other aspects of your life and when you're outside of the ER?
Yeah, it's great. So there's positives and negatives. The positives I've stated, organized, prioritized. I have a checklist in my head. I can get stuff done quickly. It really is it really is an advantage to be able to think like an ER doctor in administrative circles, where you're able to quickly identify the most important thing, then what to do next, and then to accomplish it very quickly and then move on to the next task. People say there's no such thing as multitasking. They're right, actually. Your brain can't multitask, but you're selective monotasker. So you can get things, and you can phase shift. So you can get things, a task done, and then quickly switch to the next one, but maintain your spot in your head for where you are in the first one, and so on and so forth. Definitely I can do that. Now, the downside is interesting. I'm an extraordinarily impatient person now. Someone starts telling me a story, and I'm like, all right, get to the point, get to the point. All right, you didn't get to the point fast enough. Next story. And so it does leave you a little bit judgmental about storytelling. For example, I love stand-up comedy. And one of the things that stand-up comedians often talk about is how other people are really bad storytellers. And my view is, if you haven't gotten to the point in 30 seconds, my brain's off looking at the next thing that I have to think about. So, and that can be a very big negative. I mean, next time, talk to your parents and see how long it takes them to get to a point, and you're like, all right, I got it, Mom, I got it.
I got it. Yeah, exactly. Okay, Amer, I will be sure to get to the point. So thanks for the warning. I think that's fair. Um, and so, speaking of parents, actually, because I know we grew up in the same family, we were so fortunate to have have proponents of education and growth and always kind of striving for doing the best that you can. I would love to hear a little bit about your journey as a person of color in the medical field, how that was like for you, what kind of challenges you dealt with, or kind of what are some of the patterns or things that you noticed, and second to that, how was it? How has being a part of our larger family that so fundamentally treasures education, how has that influenced you as you've continued to grow and evolve in your career?
Yeah, on the education piece and growing up in a highly educated family, or at least one that valued education, as of course our grandmother was a teacher, our aunt is a teacher, my mom, your dad's sister is a teacher, your dad's two sisters are teachers, and so definitely education was prized. They were all Montessori school teachers, so the method of loving learning, being into it for the learning's sake, not just because you want to get a grade. I think that has left a lasting impression upon me. And then there's the discipline of learning too, treating the education as if it's sacred, because not everyone gets these opportunities, and treating it like it's a commodity is not how to do it. So definitely that was a really big part of it. To have strong, especially female educators, to me was awesome. It was everything that I learned, and uh, I'm sure that has everything to do with the fact that I became very invested in teaching early in my career, and the whole teaching award thing. I have to give credit to my mom and our grandmother and our aunt, for that kind of development, because you care about your students and you care that they learn, and that doesn't mean, frankly, being the nicest, friendliest person. It means you got to get them to learn what you need them to learn.
Absolutely.
So that definitely a piece to it. Um, as far as a person of color, it's interesting. It manifests in interesting ways. So I will say, and I'll put a plug in for healthcare, especially being a physician. I find that merit tends to rule everything. It doesn't matter what you look like, how tall you are, how short you are, how big you are, how small you are, what your skin tone is, what your skin color is. If you're good at what you do, that tends to carry very far in healthcare, and that has been to my advantage, I think. There are a few things that I did. I'm not sure if they were the right decision. As you know, of course, Robbie, I actually changed my last name. So my
Yeah.
last name was a very complicated last name starting with a Z, I, and then a bunch of other letters after that. No one could pronounce it. I was
Mm.
always at the last point of the roll call. And then whenever someone had to say the name, what you realize is people pause, and then they wait, and then they wait, and you feel this sense of embarrassment, like I'm different. I'm
Oh,
different in some way, and that kept happening over and over again. So the irony of that, though, is that in April of 2002, I decided to change my name. That, and actually I decided beforehand. I formally went through with it in Charlottesville court, to change my name. And I did it because I thought, well, shoot, if I'm ever going to get referrals, people aren't going to refer to me because of how difficult to pronounce my last name is. The irony of that is I picked a specialty where there's no referrals. When they come in,
oh
they
my
got
goodness.
Dr. Aldeen now. It used to be Ziauddin before, and
Yeah,
that's who they were going to get, and they weren't going to have a choice. But
right.
I definitely have found that name change, while it was difficult for me personally, has helped me professionally, because people can say my name easily now, and that's not a barrier. It's unfortunate that it would have to be a barrier. You'd like to think that society will just say, hey, people can figure out names, but it was something that has helped, and I think I would probably do again, although there was some soul searching involved. So
Sure, of course, of course. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that making that it's almost like a sacrifice to your professional career, but then also your name is a part of your roots. We're very much
yeah.
grounded in that. So, yeah. So on that note of being a person of color, and as I shared with you, and I know you know, one of the programs that I feel so fortunate to have launched this year is a coaching program for women of color leaders, because in all of the work that's done with diversity and inclusion and across
Hmm.
industries, what I kept finding is there is a distinct need to help and support women of color find their voice, because for whatever reason, they're always left in the lurch. Yeah, and so that happened a lot. And I know we talked about the women in our family, supporting our education. I would love to know, as you're a, what do they call it? A girl dad. I mean, you have three beautiful young girls.
I do.
Your wife is also in the healthcare field. Can you share a little bit about what your take is on women of color and education, and any advice that you have for this up and coming generation that may very well be interested in a field like yours, or anyone for that matter?
Yeah, it's great. I've thought a lot about this, not only my own status as a person of color, but obviously my three daughters who are 6, 7, and 8. Um, you know, I think everyone has like lists of, hey, remember these things, remember that things. My things are the three C's, as I like to think about it. So it's competence, it's communication, and what's the third C? Co-
Courage.
Competence. No, yeah, confidence. Yeah, that's what it is. Confidence. So competence, communication, and confidence. And I think that to be really good at what you do,
Mhm.
I think the biggest point that's really important is you got to be really good at what you do. You can be good at a couple things, but you got to be great at a couple of things. So be great at those at a few things that your primary job requires, and that takes time, that takes hard work, it takes blood, sweat, tears. It is not easy to be great at something, but do it. It's worth it. The second is communication. You have to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to tell them how you feel. You have to be able to listen. And one of the things I tell a lot of
Totally.
members of my team is communication is actually not me talking, it's me listening more than anything. You have to listen, you have to ask questions, you have to understand the other person and figure out where they're coming from. And then the third thing, confidence, or as you put it, courage. Either one is, if you got the first two, the third one should come. And the only reason the third one, the confidence, doesn't come is you feel like you didn't maximize the first two. So make sure you maximize the first two,
Yeah.
and then be comfortable in how you've done that, and then the confidence will flow.
Awesome. I think that's especially pertinent advice for for the younger generations, because the cool thing is we have so many choices and so many options to explore different things where we could end up being the jack of all trades. But I love the idea of building out some semblance of an expertise in something as people continue to grow. And I remember when I graduated high school, I think our commencement speech, whoever was doing the commencement speech said something like, our class, not even just generation, but our class is actually going to change career paths a minimum of 6 times. And that was
Wow.
many moons ago, because now I'm much older, and I'm like, man, what is it like for younger generations to have all these opportunities where maybe our parents' generation, they stuck with one thing and that was their career. So I think your advice is very, very well taken, actually. So, okay, so Amer, I'm going to ask the question that everyone's dying to know. Is the ER really like how we see it on TV? And can you share a kind of a comparative analysis there for us? And what are some of like the most fascinating kind of stories or things that you've dealt with, so we can kind of take a peek behind the curtain for those of us who don't have the honor of serving in the ER?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The answer is sometimes. The what you see on TV and the kind of the high drama stakes, that's probably 20 to 30% of what we see. Most of what we see is routine, moderate acuity illness. So what we think of as a routine, uh, the thing is, we start to think of it as routine very quickly in our training. What the thing that I always tell our clinicians, and I have to think about myself, I have to tell myself, is that the person in the ER, the patient, that patient's family, it's likely the worst day of their lives to that point. And so for me, what's a routine day for them is the worst day ever. So it's my job to be sensitive to that fact and make sure I understand that they are having a really, really bad day, even
Sure.
as I'm having kind of my average day. And
Mhm.
so that fact is really important. Do we see everything that we see on TV? Yeah, that's where those stories come from. If you ask 100 clinicians, hey, the last episode of whatever show is on, have you seen any of those cases? I bet you 20, 30, 50 of them would say, oh yeah, I've seen one of those like last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. But we definitely don't see those kinds of incredible, amazing things every day. I think if we did see those incredible, amazing things every day, we would run into sensory overload. Now, let me put a little asterisk there and say the caveat here is COVID. And I have heard stories from my fellow clinicians about how bad COVID has been. I think we've all seen patients die, that especially in the acute care setting. If you're an ER doc, an ICU doc, or PA or NP, even on the hospital floors, you've seen people die in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
What's most striking about COVID is the fact that many, if not most of those people, have to die alone, and that is the thing that gets you the most.
Yeah.
And so that's been very, very tough to think about, and for our clinicians to go through.
Yeah.
It's why I get up every day and try to kind of motivate them, inspire them, because they're dealing with a lot of these things. And I work much less clinically now than I have in my entire career. And so my job now is to make sure that they have all the support they need to continue to take care of patients.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you highlighted that, because whether it's in healthcare or if so I have a client that's in the flooring retail space. It might be the 20th flooring or tile that you sold to someone for their kitchen, but maybe they got a new home and or maybe they inherited a parent's home and that's like a special thing for them to do. Or, or someone is opening up a bank account for some of my finance clients and it means that they finally get to save for college. Like, it's not to kind of take out the routine and remember from a customer experience standpoint, no matter who you're serving, it's probably not routine for them. So to keep that level of empathy, I think is part of the whole secret to being a productive leader as well, for sure.
And I totally agree with that. The empathy piece is so important. There's empathy fatigue that occurs, but just remember, whatever profession you're doing, there's a higher meaning to that. You know, if you are involved in banking, for example, even if it's personal banking, your job is not open the account. That might be your task at hand, but your mission is, I provide opportunities for people to safely house their funds and their money so that they can live their dreams. And that's a different mindset, that meaning
Absolutely.
mindset, finding meaning in that. I think that's really important. I could sit here and say, oh, my job is to work an 8-hour shift and see 20 patients and then document appropriately and then take care of people appropriately and then go home. But actually, what I tell myself is, hey, my job is to heal people. And my profession has been around for millennia. The greatest physicians in history have contributed to the health and welfare of humanity, and I'm part of that chain, and
Yeah.
I should carry myself as such.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much. I think especially when the going gets tough and there is empathy fatigue, kind of keeping that as a North Star is something that I think can be very powerful, especially when you're leading a team and you set the tone for what's okay and what's inappropriate, et cetera. So I think that's important. And Amer, as we kind of close out now, and thank you again for your time here. You mentioned COVID. We've talked about, the vaccines coming out. I would love, if you can do a 2020 kind of retrospective, what can we all as individuals, as leaders, as team members, as members of a larger community that we're a part of, what can we do to come out on the other end of this pandemic as soon as possible and as safely as possible?
That's a great question. I think probably the best answer I can give right now, based on the information available to me, is get vaccinated when you can. And I know there's a lot of concern about the COVID vaccine. We've got several of them. Pfizer is I think the most. And please note, I'm no disclosures on Pfizer. Right? I don't share any disclosures with Pfizer at all. But the Pfizer vaccine is present. And it's coming into the healthcare community. It'll come into the vulnerable population community very soon, and then to the general public. From everything that I can see and the reviews that I've read from the FDA and the emergency use authorization that was extended, I think this is an effective vaccine. I believe it's safe, and we'll see more and more data coming out. But from what we know right now, a good prevention measure that will help save lives is to get vaccinated. I know there's a lot of mistrust. It's present in our own clinicians, by the way. Our own healthcare professionals have that sense of, was this rushed? Was this too fast? I don't really know. I'm not sure. Definitely see that. We have to acknowledge those concerns. However, this technology has been around for a while. It's been used in other models, animal models especially. And part of the reason it hasn't come out to this point as fast is because other vaccines were present anyways, and we haven't made a new one. We haven't needed to make a new one in a long time. So, so everything that I see from my vantage point right now is that this is safe and effective. And if you have the opportunity to do so, I would get vaccinated.
Great. Thank you so much. And then the last thing, Amer, I just want to ask, I know for high stress, folks who are operating in high stress situations, and this year was kind of anomalistic for pretty much any industry, I think, not just for healthcare. What are some ways that you can maybe tell or offer to other leaders as a way to kind of chill out, decompress, and do a little bit of self-care so that they can show up more resilient and available to support their teams and whichever customers they serve across their industries?
This is going to sound ironic because we're on social media now, but I would say stay off social media.
Huh.
That's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek response. Remember that media in general, social media in particular, but media in general is designed to get you to watch it and read it and consume it. And it's only going to do that if it's really exciting or really amazing or really some other exceptional circumstance.
Right.
Because if it's normal, you're not gonna, your eye won't be drawn to it. So it's bright and shiny, but too much of it can be a bad thing. I actually prefer not to be on general social media. Um, I am on LinkedIn and things like that, but I think that a lot of it can be damaging, especially if consumed too frequently. And
Mm.
it's designed, the way your brain works, dopamine surges and all that, it's designed to get you to consume frequently to the point where
Mhm.
it's almost like a drug. So I would say use it sparingly. Think of it like you would think of a medication or a drug or alcohol or something like that. In moderation is best.
Awesome. Thank you. Can I put one caveat to that? After you watch this live stream, then you should shut off your
Fair enough.
social media.
Fair enough. Yeah. But don't watch this thing over and over again. So
Yeah, even though you might be inclined to, because it's
that's
really
right. Even though we're so interesting and exciting, just, take a break.
exactly.
Take a break. Go for a walk. Go for a walk.
Awesome. So, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you are busy doing a lot of important things. I am so grateful for your insights and for your time today. So, we are rooting for all of you in the healthcare field, and I'm hoping that the rest of us can do our part to get this done, and then kind of enter a whole new phase of exciting developments that are a little less costly in so many ways. So, really appreciate you and all that you do.
Thanks so much, Raabia. Really appreciate the opportunity. Please feel free to give my contact info to whoever you need to. So,
Awesome. I will.
great.
Thank you, Amer. Take care. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. It's been light to have you here. And we'll see you at the next Legit Leadership Live series in January. So take care and be safe. Thank you.
Take care.